Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork will commence later this year. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, Senior Advisor at EdelSonInstitute.com. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Oil seems to be doing much better than many predicted, especially for this time of year.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things going on with there. One is that we have continued problems in the Middle East. And so right now, people are really pricing in that things could go seriously wrong there in the Kurdish region. And so if we see spreading violence there, then that could send prices higher. That's why we've seen the real bid up. But it's more than that. We're also seeing Russia and Saudi Arabia talk about extending their production cuts well into 2018 now. And so people look at that. They look at supply, which is tightening up a bit. They're seeing the oil stockpiles go lower. And they're saying, you know what? I mean, this thing could run to $60. We'll have to see. So right now we're seeing oil make a good push through. Now this is West Texas Intermediate. There are different types of crude, but we're seeing that push through $54, which was overhead resistance for a while, and that brings us up to the next big resistance is around 59, and so if it can close at this level, then it could make a run to 59, and that's good for a bunch of stocks I own. I mean, things are looking up, and seeing some nice gains. I have a couple petroleum companies that are up 6 and 7% today in like one day. That's a nice move, and I'm sure other people are seeing that as well. And so maybe we'll start to see money rotate back into that part of the sector, which, frankly, as high priced as some other parts of the S&P 500 are getting, does not look bad at all.
Natural gas doesn't seem to be going anywhere right now.
No, it has some seasonal issues, and it has some build issues. We just aren't seeing it, and it's really had a terrible week last week. I mean, it bolted higher, and everyone thought that it might break out, but it's done nothing but decline since then, basically because inventory numbers weren't as good as people wanted, and there's also some weather predictions which are kind of weighing on it too. So, energy doesn't really move as a block. We have to take that into account. And, I don't think I'm buying any natural gas companies in the near future. Maybe when it gets down to the same bottom that it tested in August and October. That's earlier this month. There's a level of support around 280 that it seems to hold. So maybe that's a place to buy it. Otherwise, you might want to wait till it gets down to 260. That's like some other big support. So I'm not really worried about natural gas right now. Oil is where I'd be putting my money to work.
Yeah, I saw a long-term forecast for the winter. The West expected to be colder than usual and the East warmer. And I guess they might use more natural gas in the East just because there's more people there.
Yeah, and that's how the infrastructure there really seems to be set up.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Sean Brodrick. Sean, what's happening with energy metals?
They're the nicest part of my portfolio. I have to say things are looking good. Now, we have seen some recent weakness. Things have been kind of going flat. But that's okay. I mean, it's allowed to catch its breath. In the meantime, all the positions are up really nicely. And we're having to broaden the definition of what an energy metal is. Most people don't think of nickel as an energy metal, but it is. In fact, it's one of the larger parts of what goes into an electric car, a battery. And Bloomberg had a great story on how the electric car revolution could really boost nickel prices just because how that could impact demand. And I'm in fact looking at some nickel companies now. I've owned some in the past. You ride them up, you take your profits and stuff like that. But what we're looking at now, and what Bloomberg was talking about, is a big long-term change in the dynamics of that market. And just nickel demand increasing and increasing. And so there could be some real opportunities there.
Will electronic cars really become a big part of the market? As long as gasoline seems to be affordable, why would people switch?
Well, in China, I'll tell you why they switch, because the government says you have to switch. And a funny thing is going on there. First, China said that it was going to try and transition by 2040, and then someone who's the head of the company BYD, which is it's in fact the biggest electric car maker in China, said that he thinks new cars in China will either be electric or at least partly electric by 2030. And then another big car company just came out in China and said that it plans to be making only electric cars by 2025. So the goalposts seem to be moving closer. And China's the kind of place where you can mandate that kind of thing and actually have that happen. And of course, it is the biggest car market in the world. I'm not saying it's going to happen in the U.S. I expect the U.S. to fall behind because we don't want to spend any money on public use infrastructure and that kind of thing. But the rest of the world is probably going to be hard charging for this. Now that said, right now, electric car sales are a very tiny part of the market. But that's going to get much, much bigger. And what's going to make it much, much bigger is the big automakers of the world, the GMs, the Fords, the Volkswagens, that kind of thing. They're all getting on the EV bandwagon. And those are cars that can produce in just a matter of weeks what some EV maker like Tesla takes all year to produce. So once those guys start transitioning, that's going to be a big difference. And the price of EVs keep coming down because they keep getting more efficient at making these cars. When you only make a few of them, it's not really efficient. But when you mass produce them, just the prices, the costs come way, way down. And so we're starting to see that virtuous cycle added into the market as well. So yeah, this thing can actually happen. And I'm sure people back in the turn of the 20th century were holding onto their horses and saying, oh, these newfangled cars, they're stupid, they break down. Why would you possibly want to own one? And all this stuff. But you know what? Every now and then the future comes by and makes a big change. And that's what we're potentially looking at here.
Sure. Well, the first cars were electric.
Yes, I've read that too as well. They did some crazy things with the first cars, by the way. There's all sorts of different innovations that were tried back then and like stuff like that. And so we may not be on the final thing for the electric car and EV batteries too, by the way. There's now talk of a sulfur battery and stuff like that. But at least for the next 10 years, we'll probably be using batteries like the ones we use now. because it takes a long, long time to introduce new technology into the whole chain of like what's being designed, what's being used, what's reliable, and stuff like that. So there are ways this could change, but for the next 10 years, this is what we're probably looking at. And so as long as your bet could pay off within the next 10 years, this isn't a bad time to make it.
When do you see robots actually doing the driving?
Oh, well, that's coming sooner rather than later. In fact, they're doing all sorts of tests with like robot trucks now. And in fact, I have an investment in robots that's doing very well. And so it is kind of scary when you talk about it. You know, I mean, everyone's jobs being replaced. I would hope that doesn't happen, or they'll have some kind of solution for it. But on the other hand, robots, drones especially, are really exciting. They're an obvious place where people should be invested. The upside of potential on that is practically no roof on it. So there's a lot of good stuff that can happen in like that area as well.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after this.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead zinc silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineer gold mine in the Atlan district of northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick. Sean, is gold under pressure right now, and why?
Yes, gold is under pressure from the rising U.S. dollar. I keep posting a chart from time to time on my Twitter feed of the U.S. dollar Japan cross trade, Japanese yen, and right now the U.S. dollar is appreciating against the yen, and gold nearly always, not always, but nearly always moves opposite that. And the U.S. dollar is breaking out to the upside. This is due to improving economy. We've had the best industrial growth, I think, since 2004. There's all sorts of good things for the U.S. economy. There's also talk that the next Fed chief might be more hawkish, but we'll have to see how that plays out. In any case, there is wind beneath the wings of the U.S. dollar, and it's heading higher, and so that's putting pressure on gold. Also, frankly, Bitcoin, the whole cyber currencies, that kind of thing, that is taking some of the speculative angle out of gold, because people are now speculating in that, so they aren't speculating in gold as much. And so that kind of hits it as well. Now, I happen to think there are big risks to the cyber currencies, but, you know, I mean, people are allowed to make their own mistakes, and who knows? Maybe they're wrong, maybe they're right and I'm wrong, and so good luck to them. I hope things work out.
With cyber currencies, if you know anything about algorithms and blockchain, can't you just make your own?
Well, in fact, there are many, many new currencies being created. I think that's one of the risks. The other is also that people talk about, well, this is all of a particular cyber currency that will exist. No, you can actually split the currency, as we've seen happen with like Bitcoin more than once. And so that's the real risk, is that they'll keep splitting it and splitting it and splitting it until it's like nothing left. Then there's also the fact that your fortune can be thrown out with your old hard drive, which has happened to more than one person. So, and of course there's the whole, you know, it's very, very easy for thieves to steal things from you electronically. They like to think there are safeguards in place for this, but it's like every other month some new thing comes up where someone got ripped off or stolen or money disappeared or you name it. So there are risks to this. And my trust is always going to be in gold and silver, because I know where it is and I can put my hands on it. And I can't do that with the like cyber currencies. That said, I like blockchain quite a lot. It's a very useful tool. I think there are some small but very promising companies in that area too. And so I think, you know, that's an area where, speculators will be at work. A lot are going to get burned, but on the other hand, fortunes could be made as well.
Some people have likened cryptocurrencies to the tulip craze of the 1600s, where what is that really worth? It's a nice color, it's a nice flower, but what can you do with it?
Well, yeah, there's that, but you can say that about most investments. I think the biggest risk is it's used by so many criminals and stuff. In fact, that's why China clamped down and actually prevented Bitcoin from being used, but that ban will probably be lifted soon. But I mean, that's why they did it, is because that was a way for criminals in that country to sneak around the government safeguards. And so, you know, that kind of thing just really drags on the legitimacy of the currency. And so that's yet another risk there.
What about Russia's embracing of the crypto ruble?
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, they do a lot of wild things in Russia. Who knows? Maybe that's going to work out for them. And they're also doing stuff with China, cross-trading stuff, making sure they can price things outside the U.S. dollar. I think that's actually a risk to the U.S. dollar. No one wants to listen to me about that, though. Is that China, Russia, and like Saudi Arabia could get together and decide they don't need the U.S. dollar. That's a big risk, in like my opinion, and is probably one of the larger risks we face in the next 10 years. Doesn't have to happen tomorrow, but it could happen down the road. So yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on in the crypto space. It's just, you know, there's also a lot of scoundrels and rascals, and anybody can really create their own currency. That's also kind of a problem. So there's a lot of things going on there that make it more risky than your average investment.
And of course, we know the riskier the investment, also the bigger chance of a huge profit, right?
Right, exactly, which is why people are in that area right now.
Could you see more countries getting into cryptocurrency?
Absolutely. I mean, especially anyone that feels like the United States is using its currency like a club, which some countries, let's say Iran, for example, certainly get that feeling. You know, then they might decide to pursue this alternative. I could absolutely see that kind of happening.
Sean, anything else you wanted to add today?
No, well, I would mention marijuana, though every time I mention this, you guys put up some kind of crazy picture of a giant joint or something. But I will mention that it's been a heck of a week for the marijuana stocks. I've had some moves in my recommended positions that are outstanding. Canopy Growth, MedRelief, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is all because we are seeing a big investment into Canopy Growth by Constellation Brands, which is a big beer, alcohol, and other beverage maker down in the U.S. And so people are thinking that's the tip of the iceberg, because Constellation Brands wants a piece of the action that it can see is going to happen up in Canada starting next year, you know, when you have the full legalization of like recreational marijuana. They want that. And they won't be the only ones. I mean, when you look at other companies like, say, MedRelief, for example, you know, it's a huge maker of the cannabis oils up in Canada. And so a U.S. company, I mean, say a big pharmaceutical company, could pick up a piece of that for what's basically pocket change, because the market cap's so small. And you can see this over and over and over again. There are so many opportunities up there. And one nice thing about it is these companies can invest in Canada in the cannabis market without getting any pressure from our federal government, which they get down here in the U.S. And so that means they'll be better prepared for when the U.S. finally flips over and actually opens up our whole cannabis market, which is probably coming, you know. And so then they'll have all their stuff set in Canada, so they can start to bring all of that know-how back over the border. So you can see why it's a really smart move for them in many ways, and you can see why money is now pouring in to these Canadian cannabis stocks. So a lot of things are, you know, lighting up again. In just to have a little fun in that area, a lot of things are lighting up again, and there looks like some very positive action in that sector right now.
Do you see craft brewers also adding perhaps a little bit of marijuana bud into their product?
I think every brewer and every pharmacy in the U.S. should be asking themselves, why aren't we invested in that market? You know, because this is something, once there is legalization in the U.S., they can then bring whatever, you know, expertise they have acquired up north and bring it back. So of course they should be doing that. That's just crazy not to. So you name a brewer, you name a beverage company, you name a snack company. Why the heck aren't they invested in that market? And I think that's a question they're going to be asking themselves going forward.
Sean, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks. It's always fun.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Senior Analyst for the EdelstenInstitute.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Any questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.